Hello everyone, this is CJ with Cycletron. Well, about 6 weeks ago, I test rode a Harley Davidson LiveWire at my local Harley dealer. I posted a video about my LiveWire impressions, but I wanted to talk about, as I thought about it more, it's a great bike, but obviously it's priced way too high for most folks to even consider buying. And I'm in that camp. I mean, I'm not really in the market for a LiveWire, but I think I might have been tempted if they had made it a little more reasonably priced. And I know there's people with a lot stronger interest in the bike that feel the same way, that it's just priced way too high. So I got to thinking, Harley clearly doesn't want to discount this flagship electric motorcycle and kill the resale market and just get a black eye over it, because they probably have more modestly priced motorcycles. And if they drop the price on their flagship, that's going to put pressure on subsequent motorcycle models. But they have offered a little incentive, basically an extra $2,000 trade-in credit if you trade any type of motorcycle in for a LiveWire. But beyond that, there's been really no incentives to unload these bikes. At my local dealership, they were one of the LiveWire dealers, and they had to go through some special training and install a special charging station, and they incurred a lot of cost to be able to sell the LiveWire. And they've basically got their full allotment of bikes that have been sitting on the showroom floor since about August of 2019, so well over a year. Even though when I went to the local dealer, I told them I was not a buyer for this bike, I just wanted to check it out. They were okay with that, but even having told them that, they called me at least once a week since I test rode that bike, seeing if I'd be somehow interested in buying it. So it got me thinking, instead, why didn't Harley Davidson offer a lease on this bike? I mean, they could still do it, and I think this is the way to handle this situation with this LiveWire and clear them out of the showrooms. I mean, again, the 2020 models are going to be released, or the announcement for those bikes, well, and I guess the release would be shortly thereafter, in a little under a month here, so third week of January. I mean, does anybody expect them to come out with 2021 LiveWires when virtually all the 2020s are still sitting on showroom floors? I don't think so. But here, as the date of my recording this, December 21st, 2020, they haven't offered any other incentives, and I can understand that. So I think this lease option would be a good way to go. Now, typically, you can't get a lease on a motorcycle. I've heard of a few. I haven't experienced firsthand, but I guess theoretically some models have been, non-Harleys have been offered on a lease, and I think there's been a few dealerships that have offered used Harleys on a lease basis. I'm sure most of you are familiar with how a vehicle lease works, but I thought I'd go through it real quick just to illustrate how I think it could apply to the LiveWire here. The first time I ever, and the only time I ever leased a vehicle, was about 8 years ago. I leased an SUV. And so what you're doing is you're paying the difference in the cost between the sales price and the residual value, which in essence is it's what the manufacturer thinks the depreciated value is going to be at the end of the lease term. So in this case, I think it was like a $50,000 car and had like a $36,000 residual. And so I paid that over a 3-year period with the interest charges associated with it. And it turned out that after 3 years, the resale value is actually about $4,000 more than the residual value. So with most leases, you have the option of purchasing the vehicle for the residual value, or you can just walk away, hand the keys back, and move on. So again, for a lease, let's see how this would work on a LiveWire. You're paying the difference between the sales price and the residual value. The manufacturer determines what that residual value is. Now, in the case of an electric motorcycle, that's a little tough, especially a premium bike like the LiveWire, because there just hasn't been enough sales history to establish what a good residual value is. So that's where Harley Davidson can step in and just say, set up a good but frankly slightly high residual value, so it makes the cost of leasing lower to the consumer. So you pay that difference between sales price and residual plus the interest or money factor, as they call it in the leasing jargon. And there may be some other fees like early termination fees or any reconditioning costs when you turn it in. For a car, there's a mileage limit for the lease term. And then I doubt there'll be that on a motorcycle, but they might put some high mile value in there, or some high mileage limit just to protect themselves. And also, if I were to lease a bike, I would make sure that the lease period was also coincided with the warranty period. So, because they own the bike, and you're not going to put accessories on it. And again, this is why I think it's good for Harley to pick this model. On a normal Harley, they expect you to customize and accessorize a lot of things on the stock motorcycle. I don't see any interest in really adding anything to the LiveWire. I mean, most people I think that would get it would ride it stock. I don't know what you would do to a LiveWire, quite honestly. So I think it's a good candidate. But let's say Harley steps up and sets a residual value after 3 years at $23,000, and we know the MSRP is around $30,000. You know, let's say with all the fees, the interest, and the residual, the difference between sales price and the residual, you're looking at a total charge of $9,000. So if you take that $9,000 and divide it by 36 months, a 36-month lease term, that equals a $250 a month lease payment, which sounds a lot better than paying $30,000 full price for the bike. And then if you don't keep the bike after a few years for whatever reason, who knows what the resale is going to be on that thing. And then you're not going to have to worry about, do I have to replace the battery? And how much is that going to cost? Is it 4 or 5, 6 years? Well, you know what that's going to run. So again, for somebody who wants to try some new technology, be an early adopter, and from a Harley Davidson standpoint, you know, get these bikes out of the showroom. Let people start, you know, get on them. You know, they'll pay $250 a month for the privilege, and maybe encourage other people to buy another LiveWire, or to get maybe a cheaper model if those are coming down the pike in terms of a cheaper electric model. But again, I think this is sort of a face-saving opportunity for Harley, so they don't have to discount the bike to get it out of the showroom right now. Now you could say, well, in 3 years, let's say they set a residual of $23,000, and the bike, you know, is only going to get $20,000 in the resale market. You know, that's a better problem to deal with now than figuring out how you're going to get a $30,000 bike off your showroom. I mean, they could discount the price of the used LiveWire and kind of have it go under the radar than trying to discount the price of a new bike, which they're obviously not going to do, and I can understand why, but it also impacts their ability to sell any other electric bikes while all these things are sitting around. I mean, it's not like in the old days of when certain model years back in the 80s, you could buy leftovers and went 4, 5, 6 years back, and you know, put a new battery in, maybe replace the tires, and off you go. I'm not sure I'd want to get a LiveWire that was 3 years old new, even though it hadn't experienced all the charging cycles. It's still, you know, 3-year-old technology instead of something right off the assembly line. So what do you think about this idea? Do you think it's viable? Is it something you think Harley would do? I actually asked the dealership if Harley would consider leasing this bike, and they said, oh, that sounds interesting, but I mean, that was the end of it. So again, please tell me what your thoughts are. And again, I appreciate all the support you've been providing to the channel. And if you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe.